This week on Jared Scott Outdoors, we are heading out elk hunting. We've got two youth that have never done it before. We've got a great show, lots of action. Stay tuned. Welcome to Jared Scott Outdoors, your source in the field for local outdoor news. This is a November elk hunt rifle. So we've got two different kids here. We've got Kannon and Karter, who have never elk hunted before, Oswald's, and my buddy Derek Oswald. And anyways, his boys drew a November hunt, and I asked if I could tag along. I always like coming out and helping kids get some elk. So we're going to go out and see what we can do. So Kannon, what do you hope to get?
A big bull.
Big bull. Karter?
Same.
Same. All right. Everybody wants a big bull. I always want them too. So anyways, we're going to go out. We're going to see if these guys can't get their first elk ever, and we're going to have a fun time doing it. Let's get after it. Starting off this hunt, we went to a point that's a good spot to glass the surrounding area. From here, we could see tons of country, both behind us and in front of us. We did see a handful of deer, but not a single elk. I was pretty optimistic about this location, so it was a bit of a disappointment to find zero elk. Well, where are they at? After calling it quits on this spot, we drove to another part of the unit a little lower in elevation and found another great spot to glass from, but just like last time, we couldn't find any elk. Now there were still lots of places to look at, so we kept at it. The next spot we wanted to glass from took a lot more work to get to. This would be a pretty good hike up a steep hill, but I figured the hike was worth it as it would give us a view of lots of good elk country. As we were hoofing it up the slick hillside, I started noticing what I thought were a lot of deer tracks all over in the snow. Looking around, I was surprised to see a big herd of bighorn sheep just 100 yards or so above us on the mountain. I don't know how I hadn't seen them earlier, but they had surely been watching us. The other guys were still coming up behind me and hadn't seen them yet, so I got their attention so they would get to see the animals before they took off, as I assumed they'd run at any moment. Instead, the sheep just kept a close eye on us. There was a pretty nice ram among all those bighorn sheep, but he was too interested in the ewes than to be concerned with us. We all watched for a while, and then as they didn't run off, we finally just kept hiking to our destination. Since we weren't walking directly towards the animals, they watched us but still didn't spook. I was quite surprised that seeing 5 hunters hiking this close to them on the mountain didn't get them running, but that's what happened. We made it to the top of the ridge, which gave us the good viewing spot we were hoping for. We sat down and pulled out the spotting scopes and binos so we could pick apart the country in front of us. Meanwhile, the sheep were still just hanging out behind us. In fact, they completely relaxed and went to feeding and even bedded up. They weren't concerned in the least about us anymore. Well, we weren't after a bighorn ram, so it didn't matter today. But I, for one, sure enjoyed watching them as we glassed for elk. As far as elk go, we had the same problem as earlier. No elk. We just couldn't seem to find any elk anywhere. We'd glassed over areas that have held hundreds of elk in past years, but not today. What happened next I wish I had on camera. We had hiked out to the truck and drove back to the highway. With only an hour of light left, we went ahead and glassed from the highway all the mountainsides we could see as the setting sun was highlighting the west-facing hillsides. The goal was to find some elk to hunt the next day.
We don't know if they spooked though afterwards. We just gotta go. Okay, you guys ready?
Sure enough, that's when we finally spotted a herd of 20 to 30 elk several miles away. Quickly looking over our maps, we found the dirt roads that would get us closer. With 45 minutes of daylight, we figured we'd give it a try. Driving as close as we could, the elk literally watched us drive below them. They were still 800 feet in elevation above us and about a half mile away. Far enough away that while they watched us, they didn't spook. We figured we'd try the same thing we did with the sheep earlier. we hiked at an angle away from them so they didn't feel as threatened, and then as soon as we were finally out of sight, we turned and headed back their way. They couldn't see us, but we couldn't see them either, so we really didn't know if they stuck around or spooked. All we could do was make the hike and hope they were still there when we showed up. The problem is that now we were down to a half hour of shooting light and a real fast, tough hike ahead of us. Basically, if you look above us, the elk were over the round of the hill beyond the scattered trees you can see. We had glassed the elk before leaving the truck and had spotted a few bulls. So if the elk were still there, we knew we had some bulls for these boys to target. So after a day of no action and not seeing a thing, it was now a frantic hike as fast as we could will ourselves up the mountain to get in range of the elk before we lost our shooting light.
What do you think?
Oh, it's hard.
We had a long ways to go, but it was doable, I thought. We didn't have to make it all the way there, just within shooting range. Pushing it as hard as we could, we had to take several breaks as our legs were on fire. If it wasn't for the adrenaline that came with a possible shot ahead of us, I don't think we could have done it. We just made the grind up the mountain pushing hard. With little time left, I crept around to our right to see if I could see those elk. Up until now, we still didn't know if we even had elk up there. As I peeked over, I did indeed find the elk. I could only see a few of them, but they were still over 400 yards off and in a bad spot to get the boys set up on. We still needed to get higher for a better angle. Swinging back to the left to stay out of sight, we kept on hiking. At one point while we were resting our legs, we took a few minutes to go ahead and discuss what was possibly going to happen and try to line everybody out. We talked about some of the different scenarios that might happen, trying to prepare these boys. To try to simplify it, I would help Carter and Derek would help Kannon. Another 100 yards closer, we crept in again. The elk were all out in front of us, but we had to stand up tall to see them. There was no way of getting our hunters set up on shooting sticks and still be able to see the elk. So our only option, even though we were down to minutes of shooting light, instead of risking spooking the elk, we chose to swing left out of sight again so that we could hike even higher to get to what looked like a little knob above us. That would hopefully get us high enough that we could get set up for some shots. But time was running out in a hurry, and so we had to push hard. Even though the elk were under 300 yards, we still couldn't see them very well, and so we had to move again. With just minutes of daylight left, I was really getting worried. As much as I hoped we would be able to shoot from this next spot, I just couldn't see any of the bulls very well. There was plenty of cows out, but the bulls were just hidden over the round of the hill in the brush so that we couldn't see them very well unless you were up tall. So as much as I hated it, we had to move again. Getting as close as we dared, we peeked over once more. Sure enough, they were still there, but as you can see, all we could see were the tops of their backs. So you guessed it, we had to move forward even more. Moving another 20 yards forward put us as close as I felt we could get. Two bulls were sparring right in front of us with a third standing nearby.
Okay, we're just gonna go up and try to get a shot and just do it. Okay, we gotta just be ready to go. Of the two, yeah. This one over there, you can't take. Yeah, if you guys can, you take the one on the right, sparring, whatever one that is at the time. You take the one on the left, sparring. Okay, if we have to just hurry and run over there to get a shot, we gotta run if they start spooking.
If it wasn't for all those other elk that would see us if we tried to get closer, we would have been in good shape. As it was, we really couldn't do much without being caught.
I think they're gonna.
We tried to move the boys around a little to see if they could see them, but in the end, only Kannon, the older and taller of the two, was able to sight in on the elk. As we were still trying to figure out our game plan, the elk caught us and went on high alert. We had to make something happen now.
I wonder if you pick it up and just go 4 feet up. Okay, I'm gonna come up above you.
With neither boy really having a good clear shot, we realized that if we gave Kannon the taller shooting sticks, he could get a shot. Quickly trading shooting sticks with his brother Carter, with the help of his dad, he sighted in on one of the bigger bulls.
Yeah, just. Okay, don't shoot, don't shoot. It's acting kind of funny to me, I think.
Oh yeah, you got him. He's down. Yes! 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 He's down. You got him.
Okay, put a gun, put a bullet in. Come over here, switch. But you gotta make sure you're on a bull.
With the bull down, we realized we still had a chance for Carter. Getting him the sticks, we set him
If one
up.
comes over.
Now that they had climbed higher, it put all the elk in view of Carter, who was now
the back,
set up and ready.
on those ones on the left, there's the third one from the left. You see those antlers? No, too many around it.
We just needed a bull to separate himself from the herd, and Carter would get his chance.
Suck. Now the work begins.
Okay, there's one on the right still, that group. See if everything else leaves it. Do you see it? The one on the right?
It's too cold.
As you saw, there were just too many elk and too many cows all around the bulls. We had to just let them walk. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, having 2 elk down would have made for a miserable night. So maybe that was a good thing.
Good job. Yeah. Yeah, now the work begins. But 1 is better than 2 as far as the work goes. That would have been cool to get 2. Just if we had more time, we could have come in slower. But all right, let's hurry up there so we can get a picture in the daylight if we got any. Grab the shooting sticks behind you, Derek.
Can I put this in your backpack?
Did you put another bullet in?
Yeah.
Hey, Carter, have you got a bullet in there? Let's get them out real quick. Well, you can keep one in just in case we got to shoot that again. Is your safety on?
With the last of our daylight left, we hurried over to have a look at Cannon's bull before it got too dark.
Next time, just a bigger one.
All right, as you can see behind me, we are on the last, literally, minutes, seconds, I don't know, of daylight. That was a push, and I wish I would have got the storyline up to here, but you know, we've been going around all day long trying to find elk and hiking up to points, and with an hour and a half left, we decided to drive out while the sun was highlighting some hillsides just from the road, just glass for maybe another trip. And we found these elk and thought, God, is it possible to get to them in the time we have? And made it happen. We had to come across the dirt roads right at them. They were watching us. Hope they don't spook, and they got antsy. They didn't spook. Got out of the truck, and we kind of walked away, hoping they wouldn't get antsy. They watched. We were able to get out of sight, and they calmed back down. Rest is history. Well, not really. The rest is a lot of work. Yep.
As I look back at the boys all coming up with eagerness to go check this bull out, you can really see how high we climbed in such a short time. This is also when we realized none of the boys had backpacks. Because we'd been in such a hurry to sneak out of the truck and get out of sight from those elk in the beginning, we didn't grab the backpacks. It didn't look like they were as high as it turned out they really were. That was going to make this pack out a little more difficult. However, that was the furthest thing from these boys' mind. They just wanted to see the elk.
Not a bad elk.
That's small.
As it turned out, I was pleasantly surprised that it was a little bit better than I thought.
It's so cool.
It's a good solid 5-point there.
This is definitely one of those memories these boys won't soon forget.
Booyah! Take a little ball.
This is gonna suck. I didn't know elk were this big.
Me neither.
Yeah.
You take a ball for your first one.
Not as good as my first one's gonna be.
All right, here you go. Cannon's elk. It's a nice 5-point. You know, I was pleasantly surprised when we came up here. With the conditions, we really didn't have time to judge other than, hey, that one looks like the best one, take that one. We were hoping to get a couple bulls, but it just didn't work out with everything. But Cannon made it happen.
Yeah,
So-
Cannon.
He's now Deadeye Cannon for a day. Just one day.
One day.
But anyways, congratulations. Nice bull. Now we have the fun that these two have no idea about. And lucky for us, it is freezing cold and it's going to get dark. It is dark. So, lovely. Let's go. All right. Of course, our adventure with the Oswalds is far from over. That's only one of 2 tags filled. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of competition between these boys on who's going to show up who. So make sure to follow up next week to see if Carter can outdo Cannon.